Hi, everyone. I'm Adam Hops with the National Operations Center of Excellence. Welcome to today's Traffic Incident Management Self-Assessment Training webinar. Before I turn it over to Sharon Cuevas of the Federal Highway Administration, a few items for your information. First, this webinar is being recorded. You should have heard that as you came in. And we will have a recording available for you on our YouTube site, and the quickest ways to get it via signing up for our newsletter, the NOCO newsletter. I'll put both of those in the chat box in a moment for you to access those. So please do know everything that you're hearing today is going to be available on a recording that can be shared with your colleagues. We will be taking some questions. Please use the Q&A box specifically for your questions so that we can track them along the way. That's the way to guarantee that your question gets a view. The chat box is there for you as well. We'd love it if everybody signed in, share who you are, who you're with, what agency you're with in that chat box. We love knowing who's on the call, and I know everybody appreciates that as well of who's going through this this training webinar. So feel free to do that. Lastly, we do have closed captions available. They're on the bottom or top of your Zoom screen, a menu bar, depending upon how you logged in, but look for that CC button or transcripting service that's there on the side for anybody that needs that. I see people signing in the chat box. So Sharon, I'm going to turn it over to you. And let me just say to everybody, my apologies to Sharon. I added an extra A in her name. Being an Adam, I think I probably use too many A's in general in life. So apologies to you, Sharon, for that extra A that hasn't changed. But I'll turn it over to you. Thank you.
Good morning. Thank you, Adam. Thank you, NOCO, for hosting the 2025 Traffic Incident Management Self-Assessment webinar. I'm thrilled with the number of people that have registered for this webinar. Just to introduce myself to those that don't know me, I'm helping out the Office of Operations and Headquarters, Federal Highway Administration. The office is managing disruptions to operations, and I work on TIM and planned special events like World Cup, Olympics, Super Bowls, all of it using some of the experience I've gained over 20 years in ITS as a wildland firefighter, emergency response and recovery, disaster response. I did a lot of emergency management out west and within our Pacific territories, Guam, Marianas Islands, American Samoa. I've got a passion for safety, a passion for TIM, and what it means to our communities, our first responders, our tow operators, keeping people safe out there as we clear incidents. Next slide. Our disclaimer is standard in our presentations. The U.S. government does not endorse any products or manufacturers. Any trademarks or manufacturers' names that appear in this presentation are only there because they're considered essential to the objective of the presentation. They're there for informational purposes only. Except for statutes and regulations cited, the contents of this presentation do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the states or the public in any way. Next slide. Here's a quick look at what the agenda is for today. Again, thanks for taking your time today to join us on this for a little deep dive into the self-assessment tool. It's this tool is the self-assessment's meant to be filled out by a committee of your colleagues at the DOT, public safety, first responders, private sector partners, so you can assess how your programs are improving and where to focus your attention. The TIM self-assessment started in 2003 with the largest 75 urban areas in the U.S. and the 41 questions include strategic, tactical, and support questions. For those of you in the webinar that haven't filled one of these out before, you're not alone. You don't have to fill it out all by yourself. You've got a committee and a community of people that'll help, or other jurisdictions If you look in the chat, hopefully they've listed their contact information. Write it down for similar agencies or metro areas that are similar to yours that you want to reach out to. Because some jurisdictions are emerging and some are very mature in what they are operating. So some of the strategic questions, it just talks about what kind of formal policies and mutual aid, memorandums of understanding you have with your partners to help out during incidents, tactical questions for on-scene response, clearance practices, traffic control, motorist and responder safety, what you have in place, and then support questions. What kind of interagency communications do you have, or data sharing? What kind of ITS or traveler information are you sharing among your partners? So we're going to go into some of the improvements that have been made to the self-assessment, some of the software updates that have been done. And I'm going to introduce you to the project team that includes Brian Purvis. He's a professional engineer with 34 years of experience. He started as a structural engineer and moved to working with North Carolina DOT, performing roadway design, signal and ITS operations, traffic management center, and safety service patrols. He served at both the state traffic incident as a state traffic incident engineer and manager of roadway operations for the North Carolina Turnpike Authority, and in 2013 switched to the consulting world, and now works with AECOM, managing Georgia DOT's CHAMP program, along with working on the FHWA TIM self-assessment program. And then you'll also hear from Greg Baumgardner. He has 28 years of computer engineering experience with globally renowned R&D firms. His key skills include software architecture, design, and development, specifically for transportation and communications applications. He's been supporting the TIM self-assessment web tool design and development since 2022. So write your questions down, all those hard IT questions. These are the guys to address them. We've got a chat, we've got a Q&A box. Go in that Q&A, put in some hard questions for these gentlemen to answer today. I want to thank you again for attending, and I really appreciate your participation. It is voluntary and highly encouraged. Next slide. Take it away, Brian.
Yeah, appreciate it, Sharon and Adam. So I guess the first thing is, why are we doing the TIM self-assessment? You've got the traffic incident management teams. You're part of the national TIM community if you're on this webinar already. But this is an opportunity not just to engage your TIM groups or your committees. It actually allows you to go in and kind of deep dive, make an assessment of where your program currently is, set benchmarks, prioritize, and actually figure out, where do you want to go from year to year with your programs. It allows your regions to recognize, where they're at, not just from within that TIM team, within the region, but you can also assess yourself with national scores, look at other rankings with areas that may be ahead of you in some things to help find best practices. It really helps us as a TIM community kind of figure out where we're at and where we need to be going, and what our next steps are as far as building and advancing our programs. Next slide. So what to expect? We kind of had a little different way of the last couple of years. So we did the 2022 self-assessment. We skipped a year. We did 23 and 24, that 2-year period. So we're trying to get things back on track and do a 2025 and start doing these on a yearly basis. But we're basing everything back off the 2021. We're just taking the same questions, the 41 questions in the 3 sections that Sharon mentioned, and continuing to move those forward so we can keep that benchmark and keep those questions going. We are discussing internally if we want to make changes to those. So any feedback from you guys would be appreciated, but we are continuing to break these out, and I'll talk more about the three sections: strategic, tactical, and support. The nice thing about how we're doing this now is it's an online tool. You can simply click your responses, do your rankings. There's sections where you can add comments. I will tell you that the comments help us tremendously. Anytime you're filling out these assessments, if you've got a section that you're scoring really high on, go ahead and tell us, what you're doing. If you're in the 3s and 4s out of 4, let us know in the comment section, what initiatives you've done to move yourself and progress yourself from year to year through your program. But as far as just putting in the responses, they're just drop downs, and we'll show you that in a minute. Once completed, we're still using the 2025 scores as our baseline to measure kind of where we're at as a community, where things are going. And I'll show you where we're currently sitting as of last year. Next slide. So first off, and we'll put all this in the chat box for everybody. If you have never registered before, this is the website. So also, if you were a previous participant, you can still access the tool at the same location. But this is the website for you to register. It's the self-assessment.fhwa.trafficincidentmanagement.net. So we'll throw that in the chat, but definitely cut and paste that, and that'll take you right to the tool that Greg will go over in a minute. So if you've never participated, you'll start from scratch by registering. If you're in one of the top 75 metro regions, we want you to answer everything. Even if you're not top 75, if you're in the bigger cities and you have traffic management centers, service patrols, we'll talk a little bit more about what's the difference on those. Answer all 41 questions. There's another area where you don't have to answer all 41, but there's nothing wrong with answering everything because, again, it does set a benchmark. So even if you're not a top 75 metro area, you're Los Angeles, Atlanta, Charlotte, some of those bigger cities, you can still utilize all 41 questions. Next slide. So there are 9 questions in there that are not necessary if you're in a rural program or an emerging program. So this may be an area that doesn't have certain aspects that some of the bigger cities have. But again, if it's pertinent, go ahead and answer it. And answer all 41 if you can. There's 9 questions that are not required in the self-assessment. If you don't answer those, you can leave those 9 blank and it will not affect your score. So go ahead and to the next slide. So if you've regularly participated or if you are transitioning, if you're new in your role, but you know that it's in a top 75 metro or one of the bigger cities or bigger programs, we really want to continue the trend of doing these every year. Some of the non-metro, some of the emerging programs or some of the rural ones, the 9 questions that, and they're highlighted and Greg will show those. Some of the things that you may not have developed in those areas, if you don't have roadway clearance time, incident clearance, or secondary crash performance metrics, if you don't have safety service patrols or a traffic management center, or if you don't have certain towing things at your disposal, you may be considered an emerging or a new program. So those questions are not required. But again, if you can answer them, go ahead and answer them and put some comments in those locations. So next slide. So again, I just kind of reiterating again, all 41, if you're a top 75 or a major metro area, you can drop out 9 of them if they're not pertinent to your region. So we'll just go to the next slide. So how to complete this? It's intended as to be done as a work group, as a TIM committee. So these are the players: law enforcement, fire rescue, EMS, obviously your DOTs, public safety communications, your 911 centers, your PSAPs, emergency management, towing and recovery, hazmat cleanup contractors, your media. You can even make this an event. Let the public know what you're doing. That you're out there assessing your program. This is a good time to kind of put some PR to your programs. And then if you've got other specialty groups out there, let us know that they're coming to the table. Your MPOs, your rural planning organizations, all of these folks, let us know who's coming to the table. I will say this. We've learned over the years that about 50% of these assessments are done by teams in a group setting. But if you're the champion for your area and you're having trouble or your timing doesn't work out where you've got a team scheduled, a team meeting, go ahead and fill it out and submit it as a solo. If two people do it in the same area, we're looking for redundancy. We'll look at that and communicate back with you if two people do it for the same region separately. So we'll communicate and let you know that. So if you do need to do it as an individual, as a representative of your TIM team or your TIM community, feel free to do that. We will definitely accept it if you cannot do it as a group or a TIM team or a committee. Next slide. So this is kind of where we were at last year. This is a snapshot of all the areas that participated. So some of them that I'll call out that were really exceptional. Starting from the west side, California, Colorado, Nebraska, you can see that a lot of those regions were picked up, and they do a good job year after year of filling out these assessments. Jump over and look at North Carolina. A lot of their regions are covered. Florida, especially, very densely covered with assessments for all their individual TIM teams. So, we really like to see that. So even if you're in and I'll use Nevada, they do a great job in Vegas and in Reno. We would like to see some of the rural areas start in the emerging and developing. Go ahead in some of these other areas, some of these less densely populated cities and regions. Please go ahead and use this as an assessment of your program. Set those areas as a benchmark. And if you want to find out if a previous version was done the last couple of years, you can reach out to us. We'll give you the contact email. Or if you want one from last year, the last 2 years, we can look in the archives and send you examples of what was done previously so you can see what was done from a historical standpoint also. So next slide. So we do get quite a few of these. Our goal is at least 100. So we'd like at least, 2 from each state as a minimum, because we know there's at least that many TIM teams out there. We had last year, we had 80 programs, 80 TIM regions that filled out the assessment. So we had a little bit of growth from 2022. The mix was a little different, and I'll talk about that. The score was close to 71 out of 100%. That's a 10% increase over our baseline from back in 2015. The top 40 metro areas, about a 76 score. For the top 40, top 75 dropped down just a little bit, 73.8%. When you drop below that, it drops a little bit more, around 66%. The bigger areas have more resources, more funding. So this is to be expected and pretty much a trend that we've seen through the past. Next slide. So here's kind of a snapshot of the participants. Almost 100% of transportation, federal highways, DOTs have done a really good job of participating in this. Law enforcement's the next highest, and then it kind of drops down to fire and rescue. Really happy with the towing and recovery participation. Those guys are usually the last ones to come to the incidents, but it looks like they're doing a really good job of coming to these assessments. And then 911 centers, EMS, hazmat, and even 18% media is coming to these. So a really good blend. So get what you can get to come to these things and get their feedback and input. Next slide. So here's the ranking. So back in 2015, so we're at a 10-year snapshot coming up this year. So we were at about a 64%. We peaked in 2022, went up to a score of 73 on our assessments. We actually dipped last year, but looking back from 2022 to last year's scores, really the reason for the dip was interesting. We had, if you notice down at the bottom, it says it excludes rural and emerging TIM programs. So the ones that didn't fill out the full 41 questions are the only ones that we put in this table. Last year, we had a couple of groups that in 2022 were in the emerging and rural TIM assessment that only filled out, did not fill out 9 of the questions. So quite a few of those actually moved in and filled out the full 41. So obviously they didn't score quite as high as the metro areas. And then I noticed some of the big players, like a couple of the big regions in California, did not fill out last year, which those are very high performing TIM regions. So that lowered us a little bit. And then with some of the emerging groups actually switching over from 22 to 24 and filling out the full 41 questions, their scores were a little lower. So we had a little bit of a ding. So don't take this as a loss in how we are performing as a TIM region or a TIM community. It was just a different mix in the participants last year versus in 2022. So next slide. So as far as how we're doing on these programs, so again, the strategic section, 21 of the 41 questions, so the lion's share of it. Most of the stuff we talk about are formal TIM programs. So this is where you have, do you have formal TIM teams? Are you doing traffic incident management training and after action reviews? Are you using TIM performance measures? So we're looking at the strategies here. Really good scores. Not perfect. Out of the 21 questions, the highest score was around 42 out of a potential 45. The lowest score was about 13. So, we're still got some room for growth on the strategy. Next slide. So some of the key things that we've looked at from last year's assessments, the groups that tend to score the highest are the ones that are having formal TIM team meetings and doing it on a more frequent basis. The lower ones are meeting informally or once a year or only during major after action reviews. The ones that meet, 2-4 times a year tend to score really high. So consider with set schedules and meetings. So next slide. The next section, well, and as far as the strategic, some of the big hitters, and this is for strategic and tactical. Atlanta Metro in Georgia, Florida District 6 and 1, Louisville, Kentucky, Columbus, Ohio, Northern Virginia, the National Capital Region. Those tend to be some of your really high performing. And we can go back and look at these assessments and rank them and let you know who scored the highest in one of the sections if you need help trying to set up some best practices or do some peer exchanges. On the tactical side, 17 questions. Some of the folks actually scored 100% on these. They got a score of 45 out of 45. The lowest score, 21, at about 50% of the scores. But these are a lot of the TIM quick clearance laws, the removal laws, fender bender laws, things like that. Your policies and procedures for incident clearance and response, and then your motorist safety measures. Those are kind of the key things. Next slide. So again, scored really high in this, overall score of almost 76%, a good increase from our baseline, almost 10%, but a little bit of a decrease. And again, that's because we had more of the emerging groups starting to rank themselves on this, which is absolutely fine because those groups are setting benchmarks and starting to look at initiatives in those regions or in those assessment items. Next slide. The last section, this is one where we tend to see groups either go really high or really low. I think like Central Florida, the District 5 area of Florida, Maryland's chart programs, these are ones that do really well with like data collection and integration, sharing information. So we had some that, and it's only 3 questions. You're either going to get really high or really low one here. So next slide. So the highest scoring of these, typically is sharing information across their TIM communities. It was actually an 11, almost 12% increase over the baseline, where the average is only about 10. So this is another area where small initiatives can actually get your scores to go up considerably. Next slide. So again, some of the higher areas, I'm not going to read all these, but you can quickly look. Arizona, I guess I can just say all of Florida tends to be very high performing. Metro Atlanta, Kentucky with the Trimark TIM team, Massachusetts, Michigan, New York, they fill out a lot of these. Ohio, Texas, Virginia, and Wisconsin. So I said I wasn't going to do it, but I did. These are in no specific order, but we are seeing some of these high ranking groups all kind of clumping up near the top of the ranking. There's less things that they can really focus on, but there are items that every single one of these groups can continue to grow and zero and get some of the scores to nobody's at 100% yet. So there's continued room for growth and advancement. Next slide. So as far as using the assessment scores, again, this is just one of the examples about collecting secondary crashes. So you can go in there and it kind of tells you from level 1 up to level 4. It'll give you a description of what each level is, and then it'll also give you some advice on things you can do to move to the next level and advance. So use that as part of your discussion when you're going through the assessment. It's meant to be kind of conversational, and then use whatever you need to kind of get the number, fill that out, and then the comments, feel free to go ahead and let us know what some of the feedback was to get you to that score. Next slide. So again, this is a voluntary assessment. It is an online tool. So it's the same questions you had last year. So again, you're able to transition from paper to the online tool. Just clicking in through this, it's a very user-friendly device to use, software device. Each question has a fill in the blank section. Add the comments in the free text box as appropriate. And then, we only want one formal one submitted each year, but the tool is open year round. So if you want to go in and look at it, make adjustments and things like that, you're welcome to do so. And the tool is going to be open for the formal period. It's open now and will be open through November 30th. So that's the timeline to get your assessments done. And with that, I'm going to kick it over to Greg Baumgardner with Battelle and let him kind of go through the actual tool and show you some of the benefits of this program.
I appreciate it, Brian, and thanks to all for giving us your time to hear us speak about this tool. A couple things that Brian mentioned that I want to reiterate really quickly is he mentioned the top performing regions, and you saw the list there, and then you saw the response example that you got in the previous slide. And note that listing out top performing regions specifically for sections, you want to make sure that you use that not as like a competitive way, but as a collaborative way. So it's teaches you who to reach out to if you're struggling in some of those areas from that previous slide, and say, well, what are you guys doing and how can we use it in our program? So I think that's a big piece of this, and which also is to my bigger subject of just collaboration in general across teams. We started with this tool from the very beginning because it was a very collaborative tool. The survey that you go through, the questionnaires that you go through, that is described here on this, just it's click, and answer kind of structure, and that's really convenient for those of you that never tried it before. It should be very easy to follow. Not much has changed in that aspect, but what we're trying to do is make over time make these self-assessments more collaborative, both for your team and across teams. And so you'll see some of the changes that we made or are really to that effect. So when Brian mentioned earlier about the one self-assessment response per organization, that makes a lot of sense. But one of the things we added was, if it just so happens that you did multiple ones, if you're in the same team, you can actually go and edit each other's. So you can make them combine. You can delete one and keep all the comments from the other, move the comments over to the other one and keep those in place. So you can, even without our help now, can go through and collaborate to answer those questions and make everybody's voice heard in the final self-assessment. Next slide, please. So the last year we added auto-saving responses. So it's nice compared to where we started, where if you navigate through the tool and you haven't saved your responses, at least it's going to ask you, do you want to save these responses? And as long as you say yes, then the database will be written so that you don't have to go back and you didn't have to miss a question or have some failure cause the saving to not work properly. So that seems to be functioning pretty well. So it allows you to go through part of the survey, stop, come back later and edit it and finish. It allows you to transition. Say maybe you have 3 team members that are all experts in different areas, champions of the strategic, the tactical areas. And so you can actually allow them you can save after strategic and allow them to come in and finish the tactical. So these are some new capabilities that are really nice to have. Once you submit the questionnaire, finally, it will send you an email confirming that we have gotten all your responses, and that's your rough unofficial copy, if you will. That should happen, almost immediately, but at least within the first day. And then, we begin the process of collecting those and for incorporation into the annual summaries. And that process is cut off at November 30th. So when we use this date, that's really what we mean, that the data submission, if you haven't done it by November 30th, you probably are not going to get into the annual survey. But it doesn't mean you can't submit it. But at the same time, remember, all of this process is voluntary. We just really appreciate the feedback and the consistency in doing this that allows us to generate really good numbers for FHWA to look at to see how the TIM program is progressing. Next slide. You have to start, as Brian said, you have to start with the registration process. If you've done this already, you click this link, you'll go to the page and you can log in. There's also a forgotten password section in here. If you forget, it's pretty typical that you forget your password after nearly a year of not using this website. So that's no problem. Just click that link. It'll send you a way to reset your password. When you register, you follow that registration link that you see on the screen, and it'll ask you for some information like name and TIM affiliation and your password set and everything. Now we have to, the process has always been, we have to approve the registration. So it's not an instantaneous, you get access. You have to wait till we approve that registration. And part of the reason is because we get a lot of spam attacks to the sites in recent years. So we neglect those. They can't register, so don't get flooded with spam. But if you set your system up right with the registration, and we kind of know who you are and that you're definitely a participant, we may reach out to you, make sure that that's true, but most likely it's, yeah, we could figure it out on our own. The TIM affiliation is really nice because now we have these as official groups that allows us to add you to the right groups immediately. But we'll talk about that process in a little bit too. So once you get logged in, you can see you got a profile that you can set your information and change your password if need be and all that stuff. You see that the overview dashboard has a bunch of different things like events, announcements, a basic calendar, and then the photos. We've mentioned before, photos are really nice to have. We've got some that were copyrighted by FHWA and that we were able to post on there. But if you have some from your own groups and you really want to post those as an example to use for traffic incident management purposes and training purposes, then send those to us. I think you can upload them yourself, but if not be, you can just send them to us so we can upload them. You will see on the left the modules. The modules is kind of your navigation of what things you need to do. So when we talk about the photos, you click on the photos, that'll bring you over there. Documents and files is another important one that will have training slides like the ones that you see right now will be posted there. We also have the annual self-assessment from 23-24, which was it's not a published copy. It's more of an unofficial. This is what we submitted for publishing. And so FHWA has not given the authorization to publish that officially, but it gives you an idea of the numbers. The things that you saw in the slides will also be in that annual assessment. You will also now find under there, beginning with 23-24, are the submissions that the teams have made. They're all under permission control, so you don't get to see everybody's, but you do get to see all those, at least in your state or in your team, TIM team. And that will help you in those situations, which you say, well, I don't remember what we did last year. Well, you now, assuming you're part of the right group, that you're allowed to go back in there and view them now. The two main modules that you're interested in for doing the self-assessment are the new and the edit. So you always want to start with a new one for the year, for the season, if you will. You will go to that one to start a new self-assessment. You will, if you've already had one in place, it will automatically kind of say, hey, you already got one. This is the one you really want to edit, and then it will do that as well. But the edit feature now is, as standalone, has a good option that links you to your group. So remember what I said is if you've done multiple ones in that TIM group and you really want to be able to combine them somehow or modify one and delete the other or whatever, then you can go to the edit link there, and that'll list out your every one that you have permission for. So it's not just that you can edit your own anymore, but you can edit your TIM groups as well, which is a nice one. And I think FHWA even gets permission maybe to edit at an even bigger level, like for their region or state. So those kinds of things, again, increase the collaboration. Once you do a new assessment, you will see this opening screen, which allows you to set who has participated down at the bottom. That was the way it was done before. Previous years, we asked you to put your team name in there and your team description and your team state. All those used to be, free form text, and you can still do that here, but you'll also notice the drop downs for the TIM names and then the TIM states. You'll be able to select which one your team belongs to. So for this particular self-assessment, remember, everyone maybe for a different TIM region or a different, even in the same TIM team. So you will be able to select those down, say this is for Caltrans District 4. Obviously that's in the state of California. And if District 4 actually has different reasons why they might want two self-assessments for the, that measure different areas. Like maybe I'm just throwing this example. I don't really know District 4, but let's say it's City of Los Angeles versus non-city limits or something like that. There are things like in North Carolina, triad. There may be some that you do for the individual cities and the triad in general. That may help, be able to assess each team at a more granular level. So that's the purpose of these three boxes. The two drop downs are very important. If your team's name is not there already, then enter it in the free text box, and we will get it added as a group, so that it'll show up on the drop down. So that's still a manual process. And that description field, of course, delineates between everything else. Then you start answering the questions. Once you click next, you'll go see this screen, which is the first set of questions. And this is just like Brian was describing. You will have a drop down, and then you'll be just able to click the answer. Again, the scores are based on what you answer here. You can kind of figure out they're ranked, but it's not about the ranking. We don't really want you to consider what's a 0 versus what's a 2. What we really want you to look at, which of these best describes your team. So you'll see in that blue shaded area, a TIM program is established by a single agency and is limited to 1 or 2 key initiatives. That if that's best describes you, that's the one you select for that question. And then the question color changes once you answer it, from red to green, so that you'll see that you've answered the question. Next slide, please. You'll see here are the example red ones. This is the whole process of clicking that question 1, answering the question, and then in that case it was in question 4 was answered. You see at the back at the final slide there, the progression. Question 4 was answered, but the other 4 are incomplete. It doesn't like for you to try to submit the survey this way. So if you notice that it doesn't even want you to save it, but if you try to go next, it'll ask you if you can save it. But the idea is to do these sequentially, and then you can come back later and change them. But if you go ahead and go to the next slide and save your changes, then you have to go in and edit at some other point. So here's an example of what we're trying to navigate past without answering all the questions. So we only had question 4 answered. And do you want to save changes? And we could say save. But again, the key is you can go back and answer the other 4 later. You can select cancel, just stay on that page and do that. You can click save, and then it'll go late. You need to come back later through the edit process and make those changes. Or if you discard, that's the only one that will not write the submission to the database. So if you click discard here, then it will throw away that one question that you answered. It does not discard the whole survey, just that page. So the online portal opens today. That allows you to, number 1, start right away to get registered. We can start building the TIM teams, because again, this is a newer concept. So they're not all there. We did some of them, but they're not all maintained well. Go into your profile and edit that TIM information. That could actually help us, because that'll be something we could read out of the database. The collection period then stays open through November 30th. Once that date passes, then we will start using that data to build up the annual survey. You can update anything before that date. If you update after that date, then maybe then it won't get reflected. So that's kind of a dangerous practice. Make sure you do all your updates and be done with the survey before November 30th. Once the submitter completes the questionnaire, you'll get that email that we mentioned. And even when you update something and made edits, you'll get another email. So when we get everything post November 30th, some timely manner, we'll be sending back the reports back to you that have more detailed information, similar to that one slide we saw that lists the practical steps that you can take to increase your score in that section. That allows you to, again, collaborate with your team, collaborate outside your team to try to figure out some ways to improve those, especially If you're given tailored feedback, Brian will, or someone else on the team may give you some specific, say, hey, check this out. This is what others have done. And, hopefully you could take that into an action item. That's really why we're here to help. And then when those are all finished, we will generate the 25 annual report. When that becomes available, it will be first pushed to the online tool, as we just described, the unofficial for publication copy, until the federal government tells us that it's good to publish for real. Our team is made up of the speakers you have on the House plus a couple others. If you need to get in contact with us, you can send Sharon an email. But the best email is actually on that TIM self-assessment site. It's FHWA tim-sa@battelle.org. You'll see that when you click the link. That's basically the administrator of the site, and then you can go through and send that, and that will come to most of us. And then but again, you can go through Sharon if need be, especially for phone calls. She knows how to reach us for sure. I think that wraps up the talk. I think we got enough time for some good questions.
Yeah, so there's one question. Any chance that state TIM program managers will be granted access to view the progress status for all of their state's self-assessment submissions? So when they're registering and going on that first page, do they need to add everybody's email in that team, or how are we doing that?
Well, because the site's been up online, it's not easy to grab that information. So if they're registering for the site, they could register with the TIM team that they're a part of, right? And we'll add them to the team. But if the team's already been submitting self-assessments and there's a bunch of members already, then just send us an email with the list of people and we'll just go through, because we have administrative rights to go through and click everybody into that group. It's just a lot quicker instead of querying back into the database. So that's my recommendation. But keeping your profile up to date is probably good practice anyway, to make sure.
Another question, do we have a sample TIM action plan, best practice, or template to use the self-assessments to improve the TIM program? I think I can kind of answer that one. It's, if you actually go through the assessment, there's a section in there that says, here are some items to go from a level 1 to a 2. Here's how you go from a 2 to a 3 and a 3 to a 4. So there's actually some recommendations already in there. I actually, once we receive the submitted assessment, I'll go through and review them also, and send you some of that information. So if I see things specifically, I'll try to give you some feedback also. So there's not a formal template. Well, there's a formal template in the survey tool. I'll give you an informal response to that with some additional information. And again, you can always just email the FHWA-TIM-SA@battelle.org and reach out to us, and we can look for specific things also.
Yeah, to follow on to that real quick, Brian, it's not in the actual tool as you go through the survey, but in the summary responses that are sent back to you. And those now, as I mentioned before, are available for your TIM team already from last year. So that's the good news, is at least you don't have to go find an email or something. You can just go look on the site and pull it up. You just need to be a member of that group, which again, maybe a little administrative headache at the front, but if we take care of that pretty quickly, then I think it'll be to your benefit.
So another question is, does a member of FHWA need to be a part of the assessment? And how long should you allow to complete the assessment? Should FHWA be a part of it? I would say yes, they should. It's should, not shall. They don't have to be. FHWA, in some cases, actually fills these assessments out and leads them. So yes, definitely invite them. They've got a lot of feedback and input, and are your conduit to the national stage, and to Sharon also. So definitely include those. It's not a requirement, but it is a good idea. How long should you allow? I'll give you two best practices on that. I would say an hour, about as long as it took us to go through this webinar. If you're going through the whole assessment, I would say go through it yourself if you're leading it, and go ahead and maybe pre-populate some things, and then get the feedback from the community. That's the quickest way. I'll tell you, I participate in the one in Metro Atlanta, and one of the best practices I saw last year is they score fours on a lot of things. They're already 4 out of 4, so they didn't spend as much time talking about that number. They looked at the ones where they scored a 2 or a 3 and spent the time talking about what initiatives they could do to get to the next level. So anywhere around 45 to 60 minutes is typical to get this assessment done. But honestly, it's going to depend on how much conversation you have in that TIM group.
Yeah, and about the FHWA, at least I know from experience, even if they didn't participate, they're going to come asking for it anyway. So be sure to be able to justify, I guess, to FHWA some of these answers, because I know they're always interested in it regardless for their regions. The other thing is when you talked about the fours and not messing around, too much time, wasting too much time answering those. You also have the option when you do a new to copy last year's over, and that can help with that process as well. I have a couple questions on the Q&A section, Brian, if I could. Well, has an assessment ever been done for Montana? I believe the answer is no, right? Did you get one? Do you remember?
I'd have to go back and look. I would say send an email to the FHWA link that we put in the chat box. Send us an email, and if we've got one, we'll definitely respond either with that previous assessment, or we'll let you know that we don't have one yet. I don't
Thanks.
recall seeing one off the top of my head, though.
Sharon, I think this one's for you. What is the funding for the TIM programs?
It's gotta come out of, talk to your local division office and see what they've got for their state.
Right. Are there rural state examples? Brian, you have probably some pretty good ones.
Yeah, I will say some of the best ones that I've seen come out were out of Nebraska. They do they have a nice blend where they have some that they fill out all 41 questions, and some where they leave out 9 for some of the more rural and emerging. So and if you want a copy of one of those, again, just shoot us an email and we'll forward you 1 or 2 of them. But off the top of my head, Nebraska is the one that really stands out. They do a great job. They usually submit 6, 7, 8 every year, and they have a nice blend. So you kind of get to see how different regions of the state are performing.
So Tony asks, can we send the assessment out to 40 people to be completed individually, and then the total scores can be combined as a 40-person group? I mean, as we mentioned, we're trying to get the tool helpful for collaborative scenarios like this. So there's lots of ways to do it. We don't have any specific guidelines for you. If you choose to do it that way, that's fine. If you choose to everybody or to split up the sections and everybody answer a few, however you think that is the best way to most efficient use of your time as the TIM team is what I recommend.
Yeah, if you're going to do it that way, I would say communicate with us and let us know, so we can get those scores, compile them, and send them back to whoever's the champion for that region. And then if you want to do a final one, we can just send you the whole Excel spreadsheet with everything in it.
Right. Good point. Yes. I think the last one is, how can we access this recording later? Adam, do you have any instructions?
Yeah, I'll put the YouTube link in the chat box now, and then I'll put a link to our newsletter, which is going to be the quickest way to get it. Once it's prepared, it'll be released there.
And
I think this
someone,
is Sorry, Sharon. I just say I think this is a step up because last year or a couple years ago at least, we didn't post the recording. So at least we have that now, that option.
Someone asked if they can get a copy of the slides. Do you post that on the site, Greg?
Yes, yes, they're going to the site by today for sure. If
And we're seeing a lot of people, there's a lot of registrations that have just happened while we were on this webinar. So thank you guys so much for doing that. You should be getting something turned around pretty quick. So you'll have access, but I did see a lot of registrations already coming through.
Perfect.
Well, if
Okay,
there's no
Adam?
more questions, this is your time to ask all these hard questions of Brian and Greg on the IT side, on how a lot more collaboration has been built into the software to facilitate among your committee within your states. But you can always ask the questions afterwards too on those emails.
How do I add additional members to the TIM SA group? That is an excellent question because we experimented with this a little bit by adding, if you will, a administrator or a kind of a champion of the group. What we found was that the new registration requests were always going to everybody that was listed as administrator in those, including those. So that became a headache for the one that was supposedly willing to manage the single group. So at this point, the best strategy would be just to send me an email so I can add them. But hopefully we can resolve that over time.
Adam, when will the recording be available?
Yeah, we'll try and have it up likely tomorrow, if you check, but definitely by Monday.
Yeah, the last question I see is, will each member of the TIM self-assessment group receive the final report after submission? It will be available in the if you log back in. I'd say after November 30th, well, when everything is done, the final report won't come out until sometime late January. But that'll be posted in everybody that registers. It'll be posted on their registration site also.
Right. Yeah. Brian, if you're interested in doing this, we can send you a list of the team members to send the emails to. You generally go back and look it up and you get a few members, but we probably invariantly miss some people. So if that site's already got that administered, we can make sure that happens a little more conveniently for the members.
Yeah, so I guess it's twofold. The national report would come out in January, so that will go to everybody. The individual report for your region, yes, we'd have to do that. We wouldn't send that to everybody, just the ones that are participants.
Yeah, you're correct. Sorry, the final report could have meant both, and I was referring to that TIM group final summary report. But yeah,
Right.
the annual survey will be available to everyone online.
All right, we got dead air. Anything else, guys? Well, we'll continue to be available via that email address, the FHWA-tim.-sa@battelle.org. So if anybody needs any additional assistance, it does go to this team, and a couple other folks are monitoring that also. So if you do come up with something afterwards, please reach out to any of us and via that email, and we'll do whatever we can to help you.
Thank you.